Good morning. You are all very welcome to the third Ideas Club here in OGTC, hosted with TechX. We're really excited to have everybody here. New year. I know it's not quite the year you all thought it would be when we went off for the break at Christmas with vaccines on our horizon, that we all thought we'd be back in a different new normal, but we're not. But we are in a really exciting year. And so one of the things we wanted to sort of really galvanize you to think about this year is how we turn all of the sort of opportunity that we have around the challenge of climate change into a sort of action plan. And so there's some really interesting conversations we're going to hopefully create for you today. Here in OGTC, we pivoted last year to have a very clear focus on delivering technology that would enable the North Sea to become a net zero basin, first in the world. And that's sort of our whole reason for coming in every morning. And what we're looking for now is new entrepreneurial companies founded with diverse groups, with female leaders where possible, that will really help us bring this new technology, this innovative approach to our industry, because oil and gas is already committed to becoming a net zero producer by 2050. What can we do to accelerate that? What can we do to make a difference? And we're hoping that events like this lets us start having those conversations. Let's start thinking about what that might look like. And we're hoping that some of you who are sitting here listening have ideas, and that what we can do is help you turn those ideas into reality. So this year is particularly exciting, I've already said, because it's the year of COP26. And one of the questions we have for you in starting this off is how much you know about COP26 and what COP26 kind of means to you. So to inspire and sort of start us off, we've got a little bit of a survey, a little poll. So if that could be brought up, what I'd really like to know from you, if you could just answer on your screens, please. What do you understand about COP26? Do you know what it is? And would you like to know more about it? So if you could just answer that question and submit, that would be really great. Super. I don't know if we're going to share the results. Okay. So brilliant. Okay, so this is a really good start for the conversation today, because ultimately today we're going to be talking to you about a lot of the work that we've already done in the North Sea, but it's all about that climate change agenda. It's all about technology that drives this change. And so, and for us, a lot of it is actually leading to our road to COP26. So quite an exciting conversation. And I'm going to hand over to our new TechX director, Mark Anderson. And Mark is going to tell you about the great speakers you're going to hear from today, and hopefully inspire you a little bit into what kind of technology could you bring to OGTC and TechX that would lead us to making a difference in this particular arena. Thanks. Mark.
Thank you very much, Colette. Hi, I'm Mark Anderson, and I'm delighted to be joining you today. As Colette said, I've recently joined the TechX team, and it's such an exciting time to join the team. I've spent the last 15 years working with early stage companies in the clean tech space, and I can say now more than ever, we really need new ideas to help this incredible challenge that we have to transition to a net zero North Sea. And the TechX Ideas Club is a really important community to help foster new ideas, to encourage female entrepreneurship, and to build relationships to enable this transition. So I'm delighted to be here today, really looking forward to the event, and we're going to be hearing from two fantastic speakers, and I will now hand over to you, Charlene.
Thank you, Mark and Colette. For those of you who have not met before, I'm Charlene, Project Manager for TechX Ideas Club. I'm delighted to see so many new faces at the launch event of this year. We have an exciting programme of events and activities upcoming this year. You'll hear more about that later in the session. Before we delve into the educational content, I just want to make sure that you're all awake and alert this morning. So just go with me here for a second. Can I now ask you all to turn your cameras off, please? I will ask 4 easy questions, and if your answer is yes, please turn your camera on. Then we'll go back off again for the next question. So the first question is, did you eat breakfast today? Okay. Yeah, most of you did. Okay, camera's back off. Do you understand what the energy transition is? Okay, camera's back off, please. Do you already have an idea to develop an Ideas Club? Okay, fantastic. And cameras back off. By joining Ideas Club, are you looking to connect with other like-minded people? Fantastic. Well, in that case, please make sure you head over to the TechX Ideas Club LinkedIn community network. A link will appear in the chat. We have 3 fantastic speakers coming up this morning. Remember, if you have a question, you can submit throughout the presentations. You don't need to wait until the Q&A element of the event. I'd now like to invite Myrtle Dawes, OGTC Solution Centre Director, to the floor. Over to you, Myrtle.
All right, thank you, Charlene. And I'm delighted to be here as well, speaking to you about something which I find very exciting. Those who know me know that I like to talk about this topic quite a bit. And so my piece today, and I'm doing my bit in 2 bits, I'm going to just give you an overview about how we can imagine what's happening in the future. And then I'll come and back and talk about some of the types of technology that you might be thinking of getting involved in. So one of the 3 key areas that I think that when we're looking at something as existential as climate change is, what difference can I make and how can I be part of that future, because it's not what we see today. And a very important thing to do is really just to apply some imagination and actually see what we think is going to happen in the future. So there's 3 things that I think are going to be really useful when you're thinking about your ideas and how they fit in. I think first, obviously, your idea has to fit in whatever the imperative is. The second is we have to have this vision where we've imagined what the future can look like. And the third is there has to be the opportunity to deploy these ideas and innovation into something which meets our objectives. And so if I just go to each of them in turn, I think in terms of the imperative, I think Colette's already talked about, our energy transition. And, I think all of us are going to find ourselves increasingly involved in what is an area which is both has a lot of energy behind it, but actually an awful lot of things to do. And I think our next speaker will be talking about just the size of the opportunity, but just in terms of the work that needs to be done. So the second thing then is, do we have the vision? Well, indeed, what we're going to talk about today is how we can actually create a vision. Visioning and futurology is something which is quite common in the tech arena, where they actually invent things before we need it. I remember having my first iPad, not knowing what to do with it, but it felt necessary even then. But now, of course, it's become very useful. So I think imagining what the future can be and what you might want to contribute to that. Remember, the vision and the imagination just tells you what the endpoint might look like. It doesn't tell you what the pathway is. So anything that you feel that you might want to offer could potentially sit within that vision. And then the last piece, I think, is the opportunity. And this is not just the opportunity for the technology, it's any type of innovation about how we offer our services, innovation about how we do work. But the opportunity is quite important. We're changing out so much of our energy infrastructure that some of the opportunities which are available now have never been available in the last 50 years because we were somewhat locked into the current way of doing things. So great opportunity for very disruptive ideas to land really, really well. Lots of spend which will go in, which we can be part of, and really a big commitment from the government in terms of going up to potentially 2.7% in terms of R&D over the next few years from a GDP perspective. So an awful lot of support. We just have to see whether or how we can fit into that. So before I hand over to the next speaker, I'm just going to talk about the integrated energy vision that we've been looking at here at OGTC with our partners. And what I'm just going to do is just quickly go through, where we are today and what we think is going to happen in the future. So we're on this first page, which is where we were last year. And what you can see here is systems, an offshore system, which producing oil and gas, which is very much separated from the wind system that we have at the moment, which is producing electricity, very much high domination of oil and gas. And we can see that we're feeding energy into industrial clusters, which is going for both energy and petrochemicals. And we can see that we're feeding into customers' homes. So if I then take us to where we think we might be in 2035, next slide, please, Charlene. We can see it's become more complex. And one of the things that I did really want to stress here is this is a transition. So not everything is going to happen at the same time. And indeed, the technology that we have in 2035 might still be immature compared to the technology we have in 2050. But in order to make sure that we meet the targets we have in terms of carbon dioxide reduction, these are some of the things which we envision we'll have. So first of all, far more extensive wind production. And what you've seen is also, as we need more wind, we see that we get floating wind. What we also see is that there is integration between what's going on offshore. So now we can see the first sign of an energy hub actually in operation, connected to wind power. This is where we can get the electrification for our facilities offshore and hence reduce the operational emissions. What you'll also see is we're starting to see carbon dioxide injection facilities helping our industrial clusters. And what we'll also start seeing is more energy storage as we go to different types of energy contributing to the whole. And we'll start to see hydrogen coming into play in those early days. And then if we go to 2050, now we see it's super, super complex. And again, this is not what the future will look like, but it will have a version of this. So now we're seeing extensive wind in terms of floating wind. We're now seeing that facilities are fully electrified. We're seeing hydrogen transportation because we've developed a fully functioning hydrogen end-to-end business. We're seeing CO2 transport, and that could be import or export. And when we go on board, we're seeing that customers are now really getting either hydrogen or indeed clean electricity. We're seeing that our industrial hubs themselves have been decarbonized. You can see things like carbon dioxide direct air capture. We can see that we've become digitized. We've got our offshore operations control center, which potentially, if we have common data sharing, can actually control all of this to make sure we have the energy that we need. So this part of the report is available to all of you who want to have a look into what the vision can look like. But for me, it's very exciting, it's varied, it is technology, it is innovation, it's anything that you feel that you could contribute to this towards 2050. So that's what I have to say before I hand over back to you, Charlene.
Thank you, Myrtle. I'd now like to invite Kristina to the floor to talk you through the Closing the Gap report.
Thanks, Charlene. Hi, everyone. So I'm Kristina. I work at Wood Mackenzie, and we're a research and consulting group that focuses on the energy industry. My role at the moment is in our carbon research team, but last year I was part of the project team that worked on a project for OGTC, looking at how the UKCS, so the North Sea, could change into a net zero integrated energy system. And what I'm going to talk through for the next 10 minutes or so is the findings of our project, and hopefully try and give you guys some inspiration about potential technology innovation gaps, and inspire some ideas that, you know, might lead to new developments of technologies in the space. So we just flick to the next slide. So the project was, as I mentioned, looking at how we can develop the UKCS, so that's the United Kingdom Continental Shelf, into a net zero integrated energy system. And Myrtle's talked us through our kind of final vision of where we are now and where we could get to by 2050. So at the moment, the UKCS is dominated by oil and gas production, but wind production is developing really fast. However, where we need to get to by 2050 is that integrated system that not only has oil and gas and wind, but also looks at hydrogen production and also carbon capture and storage. And these two technologies, so hydrogen and carbon capture and storage, are going to be really key for helping the UK achieve its net zero 2050 target. And the UKCS has a really pivotal role to play in those developments because of the unique natural resources that the UKCS has. And this is what we looked at in this project. We were looking at how we can take UKCS where it is today, what opportunities there are, and where we want to be by 2050. And as well as focusing on the different technologies that can help us get to where we want to be by 2050, we also looked at the impact this could have on the UK economy and on jobs. And this is something that's really important here, is that although the oil and gas industry may be in slight decline, there is huge potential in these other industries, and there are loads of transferable skills between oil and gas, offshore wind, hydrogen, and CCS. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the findings of the report. So if we flick to the next slide. So this is our roadmap that we developed of how we get from where we are, well, today, or well, last year in 2020, to where we want to be by 2050. And you'll see that in 2050, we want to have developed this integrated system in the UKCS where all our different technologies play off each other. So you've got wind power powering hydrogen production, powering oil and gas platforms. You've got oil and gas platforms being used for carbon or CO2 storage, so re-injecting CO2 back underground into depleted oil and gas reservoirs using that oil and gas infrastructure. And you've got hydrogen moving both ways, so you've got gas from oil and gas production being used in hydrogen production, but you've also got hydrogen powering the oil and gas platforms themselves. So we can see on that right-hand side of the chart, there's a totally integrated energy system. If we now flip to the left-hand side of the chart, this is where we are today. And you can see, and as Myrtle showed us in that first graphic, we've got very siloed industry. So you've got oil and gas producing from its platforms, you've got wind producing electricity in a very separate setup, and hydrogen and CCS are still very early industries, and they're not very well developed. Each little point on our different tracks here are different key technology points we want to reach. So we want to see on the oil and gas, we want to see platforms becoming electrified. We want to see the wind powering that electrification. We want to see a growth in floating wind farms. And again, that will allow us to power oil and gas wind farms that are much further out and aren't easily powered by existing fixed bottom wind farms. And the point of this graphic here is to show that there are lots of different points on our road to where we want to be by 2050. And there is loads of opportunity to develop the technologies needed to get to that integrated system. And there is quite a long way to go, but as I said, it presents loads of opportunity. And if we flick to the next slide, this will put into context, in economic terms, some of what this opportunity could mean. So as part of our study, we modelled the capital investment that would be required to reach the oil and gas production, the wind production, hydrogen production, and CO2 storage capacity that we modelled that we need for our 2050 integrated system. And these numbers are very big and they're difficult to put into context, but what we're trying to show here is there's a huge amount of investment required in each of these industries. And a lot of this investment can be in UK businesses. So the way we split it out was we looked at the investment in the UK and also additionally international. And we can see that there's a lot that could be invested in the UK, and this could have a really big domestic economic impact. So what we mean by domestic economic impact is that if you invest in a technology in Aberdeen, for example, if you develop a new hydrogen business, that's going to impact the wider economy as people move into the area to work in that industry and all the support industries that are required around that. So in this way, there's a lot of potential, not only within oil and gas and wind and hydrogen and CCS, but the wider areas. And then if we think about employment, we forecast how employment is going to change out to 2050. And we can see here that the kind of murky blue there, which has the biggest bulk of employment in 2020, that's oil and gas jobs. But we can see that that is really shrinking out to 2050. And we're getting a huge growth in offshore wind and in hydrogen and in CCS jobs. And as I mentioned, and as we're going to talk on later in the session, a lot of the skills and knowledge that the oil and gas industry has is really transferable to these other industries. For example, CCS is all about injecting CO2 back underground into depleted oil and gas reservoirs or saline aquifers. And that requires a really deep understanding of the geology. Oil and gas workers have a lot of geologists, so hence this is really transferable skills. And as well as those quite specific skills and knowledge, there are a lot of other transferable skills around innovation and just understanding technology and the technology gaps and requirements to develop new technologies. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the session. So huge opportunity, both in terms of the economy and in terms of employment. If we flick on to the next slide, I'm now just going to finish up with looking at some specific examples of what's going on in these spaces. So this slide just highlights some of the existing projects that are going on with regards to hydrogen and CCS and offshore wind. The first thing that's maybe worth noting is there's quite a lot of focus around coastal areas of the UK. So our project was looking at the UKCS, and it makes sense that we're getting hydrogen CCS kind of clusters and projects developing around our coastal areas. And in particular, we can see we've got projects developing up around Aberdeen. It's an established oil and gas town. And this is an example of a reuse of infrastructure and people in these new projects. Some of the other main projects that we're seeing developed are around the northeast of England, so around Teesside, Humberside area, and we're getting a lot of development of hydrogen and CCS clusters in this area. And this is going to be something that is going to be key to unlocking not only the UKCS becoming a net zero basin, but the UK as well, is these clusters. So the different industries working together to try and reduce the upfront, costs, to make it more cost effective, and also to improve the efficiency. So producing hydrogen in the same area where you've got CO2 capture and transport and storage, that just makes sense on efficiency scale. So there's a lot going on in these industries, and I should say that we made this slide last year, at the end of last year, and there's been a huge amount of development even since then. So it's a really fast-moving industry. But it doesn't need to be all the big companies that we're seeing here. There are lots of opportunities to develop ideas around specific technologies. And if we just flick to the last slide that I'm going to talk through, this is an example of, or what we see on the left here are some examples of specific technologies within the four sectors that we've talked about. So within oil and gas, hydrogen, CCS and wind. And you can see there are a lot of technologies within these industries. And not all these technologies are mature. And there are lots of opportunities to develop these technologies, come up with new ideas, or even replace these technologies by something better. A key part of our study was looking at the innovation gaps for each of the technologies. So as you can see on the right there, for each sector and each technology, we identified where there was still a lot of work to be done. So you can see on those dials where it's red, that shows where there needs to be a lot more input to get this technology up to a commercial scale. And I just wanted to present this slide just to give a bit of an idea of, the scope and the scale and the opportunities that there are to develop the technologies in these industries that are going to be really key for helping not only the UKCS and the North Sea reach its targets, but as the UK as a whole reach its net zero 2050 target. And with that, I'll hand back over to Myrtle, who's going to talk a bit more about some of these examples of technologies and that we can look to develop.
Myrtle, you're on mute.
I thought I was going to get through the whole thing without that. So I'm going to just take you through 4 technologies. Now, I haven't put them necessarily in terms of the sectors, but what I want to do is to talk about technology transfer, technology development, technology integration, and technology demonstration, because all of these are opportunities to get involved in technology. And sometimes you might see the technology and you might say, look, do I have the skill or the reach to do this huge development? And in reality, you probably only need to have a component and then be part of a bigger collaboration in terms of producing the overall solution. So if we can go to the first one, please. So the first one I'd like to talk about is the technology development process. So some of you will know that how we look at the readiness of technology is from what we call technology readiness 1 all the way to 9. And there are intermediate steps. We start with the idea. We work the idea up to a concept which should work on paper. We go from paper to making it work in a safe and closed environment. And then we move this into an operational environment and make it work. So quite a stepped approach, which means that from a risk perspective, you can look at what works, you can get advice, you can fail fast, and you can adjust, because your first idea may not be the idea that goes forward. But so this is a typical a development project. This is a power link. I talked about, is there an opportunity? This power link is a technology that's ready for prototype, and it's going to give, if it works, significant reduction in terms of cost, and allow us to step towards electrifying the North Sea. So this technology has gone through the ideas phase. It's gone through, should it work? And now we really want to build that prototype. So this is a kind of technology which you might say, I've seen some of the problems, I've seen some of the gaps, where can I fit in? So if we go to another one, then we might have something which is more about integrating your technology. So you might have technology where you do have a component or a piece of the solution, but what you really need to do is to integrate with others who have other parts of that solution to get together. Now, this piece of technology here is called is a device which allows you to take wave energy, which was a separate piece of technology, connecting it up to a storage device and integrating it into an offshore setting, which allows you to provide remote power. So these are all separate. So you can see that we've got several companies together. One company, Motion, doing the wage energy converter, which and then another company doing the power store and management, which is the Halo system. Another company doing the subsea control module, and then another company looking at the infrastructure for it in terms of, we call it a garage, and the communication. So again, when you're looking at your technology, say, well, do I have the skills for all of it? It's about having part of the solution. And then one of the things you can do is to integrate with others in order to get an overall solution that can address some of our problems. The next one, please. The third one here is about technology transfer. And in particular, what we're looking at here is transferring oil and gas technology into wind. And I think there'll be some analogues when we talk about skills in terms of the transfer. So we've seen already that as we need more and more wind, we're going to have to go further offshore in order to get the most prospective areas and actually get that capacity. And as we go offshore into deeper waters, we will definitely need to have floating wind. And when you look at the technology that we have in oil and gas, we also have those technologies and also went through some of these stages. And here we've got something which is called a tension-legged buoy. So especially those of in deep areas, we have this type of technology which holds the facility in place. And this is technology that's been developed over the years, primarily in oil and gas, to actually give access to oil and gas in very remote and deep areas. And what's now happening is we're looking at applying that same technology and putting a wind turbine on it instead, and then deploying that into deeper waters in off the Scottish coast. So here is a device by Axis. They've tested it in the tank, you can see that. And then the next phase for which we're going forward with them is to actually get this demonstrated fully. So that's a bit of technology transfer. So you might say, well, I know some technology in oil and gas or other sectors, which I think can help. And then it's a case of how do I transfer that in? Then the last one I wanted to talk about is just full-on technology demonstration. So this is where you might have technology which is actually just ready to be trialed. And what you just need is somewhere to trial it, to see how it works, to make final improvements before you go further. And we've got a process here where we're working with a network of other companies on a project called Consensus, which is a 4-year project. And you've heard the term CCUS, and what we're doing here is looking at the capture piece and the utilization. And what's really good here is it's not some of the technologies existing and some of it is quite nascent, but what we're going to do is we're going to have 3 different demonstration sites representing 3 different CO2 sources, and we're going to go through the capture and utilization process with a full demonstration plant at each. So as you can see, many ways to apply the technology, from a component all the way to a system. A collaboration is key. You know, it's very useful not to have to do all the problem solving yourself. And so I hope that this has helped you think about some of the ways that your ideas could come to assist us in the energy transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Myrtle. Now it's Q&A time. And so I think Charlene's just posted, if you have any questions for our speakers, please post them in the chat and I'll read them out. We don't have any at the moment, so I'm going to ask a couple of questions, if I may. First, Kristina, thanks very much for your presentation. Really interesting, and what a fantastic report, may I say. What opportunities most excite you when you're looking at the landscape out there?
Thanks, Mark. It's a good question. I guess for me, I'm a geologist by background, and I think the idea of CCS and CCUS, so carbon capture and storage, and just the potential there is in developing that as an industry in the UK is huge. I mean, it's going to be a key part of achieving net zero if we're still going to be producing and living as we are today. And there are hard to abate sectors where we'll need to develop CCS to offset the emissions. And just the idea of taking, you know, all our knowledge that we've gained through the oil and gas industry and the development of that over the decades that we've done in the North Sea, and then just flipping that on its head and thinking about putting CO2 back under the ground. So I think that's just, it's a really exciting opportunity, and there's so much scope for it. And there's, at the moment, and especially over the past few months even, there's been so much momentum behind it in the UK and globally. I think that's a really exciting and interesting development and thing to watch out for.
Great, thank you. And I mean, the UK is obviously a leader in offshore wind, and this is such a great opportunity for the UK to lead in a bunch of other sectors too, isn't it? CCUS, hydrogen. It's a tremendous opportunity, and I think hopefully that will inspire people listening. Okay, yes, we have Javier here. I have a product that can help significantly, in my view. Fantastic. What is the right approach with OGTC? I'm developing the product, and it's at TRL 02, level 2. Anyone from OGTC want to jump in here? Myrtle, is that something that you want to talk to?
Yes, so there'll be there's several routes. Obviously, there's the support for you as an organization via TechX. If it's purely the technology development, then the solution centers would be useful. Now, if it's very early technology and you're looking for some support, especially around grounding the science behind it, there's also an opportunity to work with our research team. We have some funding from Scottish funding partners, which is actually targeted at very early TRL and matches them with a university so that the science and the engineering can be grounded, so that when you go on to build your pilot, you've got something that has some de-risking already built in. But for sure, if you want to submit an idea, then we'd be really happy to look at what it is and what your needs are, and which group it would be best to work with.
Thank you, Myrtle. I think it's important to say, isn't it, Myrtle, that it's not only products that we're looking at, it's also software solutions. Would you like to say something about that briefly? Yes,
so within the solution centers, we have three main areas. We've got an area which is a program which is completely dedicated to emissions reduction across the life cycle, all the way from the very early stages all the way through to decommissioning, reuse, and the circular economy. So we've got that. The second piece is we've got integrated energy system, and there what we're looking at is how do we approach hydrogen? What are the technology gaps there, and how can we help accelerate hydrogen? We're looking at CCUS, we've discussed that before, which is how do we develop and reduce the cost, because this is really important. Technology development is important, but cost reduction and efficiency are super important, because otherwise we can't afford it. And then we're looking at some of the other technologies that we have, alternative power and fuels. And then we've got a program which is offshore Energy 4.0, where we look a lot at the digital solutions, the data solutions, and the smart solutions that are available. So this is more, I've got a, I might want to do a smart device, I might have a novel material, or I might actually have, I've designed some AI, which I think that if we did good machine learning on a problem would actually help us. So it's quite a wide program, but it is focused on the priorities for the energy transition and where industry feel that they need that support.
Great. Thank you very much. I think, Charlene, are we out of time on this and we need to move on? Is that right? Or do we have time for any more questions?
I think we've got time for one more question, Mark.
Okay.
And then we can ask them at the end. Thank you. Great.
So Paula has asked, what are the flaring mitigation technologies used by OGTC at the moment?
Is this for, I'm just looking if someone else, I'm looking who else is on the line who could answer this, just so that it's not just me. I think it's just me, unless Nikki's going to jump in. No, okay, I'll answer. So on the flaring mitigation, which is quite a key bit, I think for us, We are about to start an exercise in the learning of the lessons from those basins, particularly the Norwegian basin, where they have managed to overcome this. We're also working with some of the other basins. There is a fundamental thing that we designed for flaring, and hence it's become an issue in terms of how you still operate safely without that. But that is quite key. So flaring is very important to us. But perhaps what I'd say is the key area for us in emissions reduction is which is where 75% of the emissions are sitting, is actually with clean power for our facilities. So perhaps the most important thing for us is alternative energies and electrification where possible of our facilities, followed by measuring and reducing all of our emissions, whether it be CO2 and CH4. Some of that, of course, is the measurement of it, and then the others. So, but we'll be happy to speak to anyone who wants to look at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Myrtle. So I think we're now going to move on. So we've had that really interesting conversation about some of the opportunities, some of the technologies out there. The other piece that we're now going to hear about is the diversity and inclusion piece, and the need for a skilled workforce. Both are really, really important, and Jenny is kindly going to talk to us about that. Welcome, Jenny.
Thanks for having me, Mark, and really excited to be part of today's conversation. I'm learning a lot from the other speakers. My name is Jenny MacDonald. I work for an organisation called Skills Development Scotland, and we're the national skills agency in Scotland. So my role is very much to work with the energy sector, and I focus on oil and gas transition skills. I'm based in Aberdeen, but I cover nationally across Scotland. I'm really keen on looking at climate solutions, understanding clean tech, and as part of my recent work, I've been involved in the team at Skills Development Scotland, which developed the Climate Emergency Skills Action Plan, which was published in December last year. So I will add the link to the chat for anybody that wants more information on some of the topics that I'm going to cover today. At SDS, we really support individuals to build their career management skills across their career journey. So that's everything from in-school, work-based employability skills, so from school right the way through to higher further education and employment. But we use skills intelligence to inform our work, and that's some of the details that I really want to share with you today. So I want to first of all provide an overview of the energy skills landscape and where we are today, and also then look forward to the future skills and opportunities to apply those skills that I'm going to mention as part of the energy transition. And I think hopefully that will sort of dovetail nicely into some of Kristina's comments that she made earlier as well. I mean, I think we all know that we're in unprecedented times, and we're very much planning for this green recovery, and focus has been made very much in recent months about the energy sector's critical role that it'll play in Scotland's ambitions to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2045. So reaching the Scottish target of net zero greenhouse gases is going to require transformational change across the economy, society, and it's going to really generate significant opportunities for developing new quality green jobs, but also opportunities for new startups to meet the challenge too. And I think that's really some of the purpose today that we're trying to highlight to you. The energy sector, as I mentioned, is really at the forefront of this shift. And we've mentioned some of those opportunities, and Kristina talked in far more detail than I can about hydrogen and carbon capture storage. But there really isn't that recognition that skills, knowledge and experience that comes from the oil and gas sector can really play, and other sectors as well, can really play a contribution to make this transition. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. So we've been working really closely with industry bodies, Oil and Gas Technology Centre, other agencies, to really support the ambitions for the sector when you look at Roadmap 2035 and the North Sea Transition Deal. So what does this mean for this energy skills landscape? So here on the slide here, what we can see is that the energy sector in Scotland is a major employer and source of economic output. So the sector had estimated 90,500 direct jobs and generated over 8 billion GVA, and that was last year. As oil and gas production is expected to decline, coupled with technological advancements, it is anticipated that there's going to be a shift from workers working offshore, and therefore there's going to be an opportunity for those workers with transferable skills to transition into some of these wider energy industries and new technologies. I think it's important to know that this is going to be an accelerated diversification, and we're seeing this in traditional oil and gas businesses at the moment, really looking at how they can move to support this transition. And that does create a lot of opportunities. And we're starting to see that transition and that scenario play out now. The forecast data on this slide you'll probably see indicates that although the overall workforce is set to reduce, there will still be a requirement of 9,900 people to fill job openings by 2030 in Scotland. Now, this is going to be mainly due to those retiring or leaving the sector, and that's what we call replacement demand. But as I say, there is lots of opportunities within the energy sector. So what does this mean? If I can go to the next slide now, please, that'd be great. Thank you. So what does this mean for skills in the oil and gas sector in this conversation today? So there's a lot of work underway to understand and get a clearer picture of what the future demand is looking like in terms of jobs and skills. And that work's been carried out through the UK Energy Skills Alliance. But there's actually a lot that we do know at the moment. Many new roles in the energy sector are going to build on existing skill sets from oil and gas, but also industrial research, manufacturing, and civil engineering. So we're not actually starting from scratch when we're entering into this energy transition. Individuals may be at varying stages of readiness, but there's certainly a lot of opportunities. What's also clear, and I think Kristina mentioned it too, is that skills transferability is really going to enable people to work across the energy sector. So it's going to be really crucial that we standardise frameworks across the sector to enable people to do that, but also those that perhaps see opportunities to look at new technologies, etc., to recognise that skills that they've developed throughout their careers to date and seize those opportunities too. So what skills are going to be needed for the transition? Well, as I mentioned, we're trying to get a clearer understanding in terms of timing and demand for skills, but there's certain things that we do have some certainty on. The first is really about digital skills. They're emerging as really, really important across several sectors, not just the energy sector. Jobs are expected to be in higher demand in the future around data science, data analytics, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. However, we can anticipate that most job roles in the future are going to require some degree of digital skills. Therefore, not only are digital skills important in the context of the energy transition, but digital skills are going to be a necessary aspect of future-proofing our employability. The next is the importance of meta skills. As technology and society changes are coming at us thick and fast, and we're not able to predict the future, we can prepare for a future that's increasingly unpredictable. And I think the pandemic is a really good live example for us all at this particular point in time. A couple of years ago, SDS began leading a programme of work to understand what these changes would mean and in the workplace, and the skills that were going to really be required to enable us to keep pace with that. And we call these skills meta skills. Can I ask you to go to the next slide, please? And I can pull these up in a diagram. Thank you. So what are meta skills? Well, I think some of them have already been mentioned in some of the earlier conversations today. They're timeless, higher order skills that create adaptive learners and promote success, whatever the future can bring. So you can see for the energy transition, some have already been mentioned: innovation, creative thinking, entrepreneurial skills, adaptability. I think we can all say that we've learned to be adaptable in the last 12 months, given what we've been facing. And that all is skills that we can use to build upon to seize opportunities moving forward. If I can ask you to go to the next slide now, please. So people need the skills not only to cope with change, but to thrive in it. But I also think it's important to recognise that the sector has been a big supporter of apprentices. And I wouldn't be doing my job today coming from Skills Development Scotland if I didn't mention, obviously, the role that apprentices have to play. Particularly, the sector has been particularly good at supporting engineering apprentices through a variety of schemes. Work-based learning is going to remain critical, and we're really continuing our investment. Currently in Scotland, we have just over 4,000 modern and graduate apprentices coming through the skills pipeline into the energy or engineering related space at the moment. So I think there's a real opportunity for new talent coming into the sector, as I mentioned, for those 9,900 job opportunities. But what we also can look at is the opportunities that apprenticeships can play in upskilling and reskilling. And I think that's really also important, that apprenticeships can be used as an upskilling tool at any age and any stage of your career. And what we're doing is we're embedding those meta skills that I mentioned earlier into those frameworks to really start future-proofing, start building, creating that confidence in the skills that you're gaining as you go through your career. If I can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just in summary, I think oil and gas is going to play a key role in the energy transition. So there's a lot of skills transferability that's able to come in there, but also from other sectors as well. And I think I've highlighted there's quite a range of skills that are going to be required to deliver our net zero ambitions in Scotland. We've got to focus on developing and retaining our skilled workforce, but we've also got to attract new entrants and continue to develop and invest in those individuals as well. Meta skills, creative thinking, entrepreneur skills are all going to be critical, and there's an opportunity for you to collaborate and develop solutions and really play a key role if you wish. And opportunities such as the TechX Club are a great way of doing this. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what some of the conversations later on might bring. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. That was fascinating. So it's Q&A time again. So as last time, please put any questions you have in the chat, and we'll read as many as we can out. We don't have any at the moment. So Jenny, I just wanted to, you touched on it at the end, but I just wanted to come back to this point about if you may not have all the skills yourself, and most people don't have all the skills themselves, let's face it. And that's a real chance for collaboration, isn't it? And finding other people to work with. And that's something, of course, the Ideas Club can help with. But on the first point, could you sort of explain a bit more about that opportunity for people, please?
I think collaboration itself is a key skill that we've all got to learn and sort of develop. And I think sometimes that can push people out of their comfort zones of starting to get to know others, starting to explore sort of skills and sort of opportunities. I think what I mean by that is that you're starting to see people now coming into this sector working with others. You might start to see those with a digital tech background, for example, collaborating with somebody with a pure oil and gas engineering skills background to start generating these ideas. Industry knows far better than I some of the tech. I'm not going to embarrass myself today to try and give some tech examples like Kristina and Myrtle have been sort of well versed in doing. But I think there is that opportunity that you may have skills coming through from civil engineering. You can start to see past those sort of problems, but you need to start speaking to people, start to have those sort of exploratory conversations. And then I think that's where you can really start to see opportunities and sort of, and maybe sort of creative thinking and bouncing ideas off people as well. It doesn't always have to be something that you do on your own. And I think that's something that's key. It's not always a solo piece.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you might be a whiz in offshore engineering, but you might want to find someone to partner with who's a commercialization expert. And that's something I think that the LinkedIn community for Ideas Club can help with. And Charlene, would you like to say a little bit about that, the LinkedIn community?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So the link was in the chat earlier. We're going to touch on it a bit later, but it's all about connecting with people. It's super important. We only meet once a month at these events, so we really need to get the conversations going with the ecosystem, with other people with like-minded minds like yourself. All about kind of figuring out what's going out there, talk to other people. You need to build diverse teams. You need to build engage in innovative teams. So reach out, meet innovative thinkers within the LinkedIn community. That's what it's for. There's going to be lots of resource in there. There's exclusive content, videos, the links in the chat right there. So do please hop on over there if you do want to build your teams, connect with other people, see what other people are doing.
Great, thank you. And then I think, I don't think we've got any further questions here. So I think we'll perhaps take a question, one of the questions we had earlier, which we ran out of time for. So Caroline says from Astromo, I believe, held a couple of workshops on behalf of OGTC. And says one of the barriers to technology success was identifying separate component tech ideas to form an integrated solution. And it's interesting in hearing what role do OGTC play in helping to identify these component technologies to enable the integrated solution. Now, Myrtle, this might be one for you, or it possibly might be one for your colleagues.
I'm definitely handing this one over to Nikki, just so that you guys hear someone else.
Thanks, Myrtle. Yeah, so this one, the good example was actually the one that Myrtle gave, which was with the motion, and ECOG to look at the wave energy device and how that all fits together. So that was something that we were working with two of those companies actually closely anyway, and had supported them on a number of projects. And it was something that we did think that we were looking at it from a system-wide piece, and something that OGTC has always done is to look at maybe some of those building blocks that are required to get to the solution. So we're always looking at those, I suppose, those technologies that may actually benefit each other. In some instances, it's just from a technical supporting side. So if I give the example of, you know, some of these devices, they may need to look at some of the technical side in terms of mooring, for example. So we try and put those together and introduce them to companies that we know that can help them, either through supporting them to push their own technology forward, or actually about coming together and maybe getting a system approach like that one for the wave energy. So it's something we've had so many projects and technologies that have come through OGTC. We can see in a lot of instances where people can help each other, or if it's with our members, maybe that they can help support the companies if there's an area of, say, the technical aspect that they're missing from, that will actually help it. So it's something we're always looking for, and we try and push that forward as much as we possibly can. But it's something that obviously it comes down to the developers themselves to carry on that conversation. We can introduce them, and then it's down to them. But we do try and figure out how OGTC can help in making these technologies much more acceptable, and then actually adopted by the wider community. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks a lot, Nikki.
I was just going to jump in, Mark, to say another example, very short, is we had a company that had been developing essentially drone technology, which is now being combined with methane detection technology onto the same device. So here is where there were two separate skill sets, two separate technology areas, but joining them together, now we have a solution for measuring greenhouse gases around a facility. So that is where the collaboration and the connection really comes in useful.
Great, thanks to you both. So we now have a question from Kate for Jenny. Technical skills are in abundance and can often overshadow the meta skills like creative and critical thinking we're doing. Is there a roadmap to manage this shift?
I think at a national level, certainly across education, we're working with further education colleges and looking at our own apprenticeships, and very much to embed meta skills alongside, so that that's part of any qualification, whether that's technical or non-technical. I think when we're looking at the energy sectors specifically, and when we're looking at upskilling, reskilling, and things, that work's being carried forward through the UK Energy Skills Alliance, which is supported by Scottish and UK government. So that's probably a work in progress longer term, I think. Great.
Thanks, Jenny. And one more for you. Questions are coming thick and fast, which which is super. So are we doing enough to encourage the next generation to join the wider energy industry, or do potential apprentices see us as oil and gas in a negative light?
I think that's a really good question. I think it's probably quite topical. I think overall, I think we need to make a more compelling story. I think when you are in even schools in the northeast of Scotland, which has obviously got a heavy oil and gas footprint, I think then there potentially is that sort of negative story that actually young people would prefer to be involved in being part of the energy solutions piece, but perhaps need to understand the wider context. So I think we really need to work on engaging those individuals, because they're quite potentially could be competition from other sectors looking for similar talent. And I think this is a really creative space. This is somewhere you can be really part of the solution. And I think oil and gas is a key part of that, but I think we could do more. And I think we need a consistent message. But I think that story is starting to come through. I think we've just got to do more of what we're doing as well.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you to all our fantastic speakers. Really interesting content, lots of great questions. I'm just going to launch a quick poll to find out how educational this session has been for you all before we hop on over into the networking rooms. So did you learn something valuable today? Okay, so 95% did, which is fantastic. So now we'll head over to Connect for 25 minutes into the breakouts. Please do use the time to connect with other people, ask questions, and we'll see you back here for the close. Thank you.
All right, so welcome back from the breakouts, everyone. I hope you enjoyed some really great conversations. I know we had a really, really good one in the room that I was in. We're unfortunately coming to the end of our event now, so I just wanted to close with a few points. First of all, the community, it's been mentioned a couple of times during this call. Be really, really great to see as many of you join our LinkedIn community as possible. It'll let you keep up to date with exclusive content, the opportunity to continue some of these great conversations that we've had, both with our speakers and in those breakout rooms as well, and continue to build relationships with each other, which is something that we're really, really keen to do here at Ideas Club. So next slide, please, Hannah. So I just want to give you a little bit of an idea about what's coming next with Ideas Club. Our next Ideas Club sessions are a two-part workshop. So they're going to be held on the 12th of May and the 9th of June. They're going to be delivered by a supporting partner called Skillfluence, and registration will be open to secure your place at these workshops. So Alison from Skillfluence has extensive experience in lean startup approaches and executive coaching. She's worked with spin-outs and startups in scientific and technology fields for a long time. And she has often done huge presentations at international conferences. She hosts entrepreneurial workshops and classes for startups and facilitates innovation workshops for universities. So by the end of these two sessions, you'll start to build a toolkit for idea generation, concept development, and then the creative techniques to drive that innovation forward. So really exciting sessions, and definitely one that I'd encourage people to sign up for. We're also going to be having a TechX takeover, which will be exclusive in the Ideas Club's community. That'll be a chance for you to hear more from the TechX team on all things entrepreneurship, starting a business, things to think about, and how to engage with us going forward. So that'll be something to look out for. And there'll also be the opportunity to book in some one-to-one sessions with the TechX team. And there'll be some contact details put into the community to contact us if you're interested on that. Next slide, please, Hannah. And finally, just want to highlight two upcoming events that are really exciting. So firstly, brought to you by OGTC, an evening with 6 inspiring leaders, their journey, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. That's going to be on Thursday, the 29th of April at 7 p.m. And the evening is designed to connect and celebrate women in the energy industry. So showcasing how we can work together to combat gender bias and discrimination and accelerate gender equality in the industry. It's set to be a really, really great evening, and I'm sure no shortage of exciting conversations and engagement. And then lastly, an event hosted by Powerful Women. On the 19th of May, Powerful Women will host a virtual event for an audience of industry professionals where they'll publish their annual State of the Nation on gender diversity for the UK energy sector. And again, that's set to be a really, really interesting event. So thank you very much for attending today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm really excited to see how some of the ideas you have progress over the coming months and how we can work more closely with you. And I'd just like to hand back to Charlene for any closing words before we finish the session, but great to meet you all.
Just a final thank you to all our speakers, all of you guys for investing in yourself and taking part in Ideas Club. Do join us for Club 4 and 5 and head over into the community. Have a good day. Thank you, everyone.